they're going to go find another job. So I guess not necessarily from a management perspective, but in a, just for sake of keeping someone on the track, I've given people promotions just to knowing that they will rise to it, you know, which I guess is the same thing. Just for their
Have you ever promoted somebody to get rid of them?
No.
Okay, that happens a lot too. Someone's a tremendous headache or nuisance, and you just want to get them out of your department, so you promote them out.
Did that happen in your company?
Well, it happens all the time.
I remember we talked about this.
It happens all the time.
Nice positive way to do that, though. I'll have to keep that in mind.
Make it someone else's problem.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I thought there was a
Yeah.
piece of the article that was really interesting about trying to protect those who are the big picture thinkers.
Yeah.
I guess I've seen kind of both of these things happen a lot working in a large company, where sometimes you'll get these, you know, new young hires straight out of school. They'll be like extremely smart and really good, but they might not want to do what is their current role. They're constantly butting heads with their managers and different things. And they'll be able to have these really great conversations with some of those higher ups, and then they will find themselves like bypassing kind of like that, again, the situation you talked about before, when somebody who was an employee is now the boss.
Right.
And things like that, because they're able to have those conversations and engage with the right people, then they get promoted very quickly. And so in a way they're protected, but in a way they're also underdeveloped. Just trying to find that balance when somebody is, you know, honestly a really good, you know, strategist or whatever they need to be, but some of that foundation isn't there.
Sure.
Trying to
You work at Capital One, is that what you said?
I do.
Yeah. Do you know who Jory Burson is?
Not right off.
Okay. He's the head of global HR,
Okay.
but based here in Richmond, and he came to our class last time and spoke, and he had some interesting perspectives on, I think Capital One does a really good job of that, right? You know, they do a lot of leadership training and team building, and they have executive coaches, and they do all sorts of stuff like that. So I think they do a pretty good job, but I'm sure, you know.
It's a big company, they definitely try.
Yeah,
That's the law.
it's a big company. How does Philip Morris do on that type of stuff?
They just started this new campaign called the Leadership Advantage.
Okay.
Trying, like, to develop leaders.
Okay.
Philip Morris side, they're more about we're like kind of maintaining and not being, you know, new age thinking, because we're the, you know, the cigarette side.
Right.
So they care more about engineers,
Yeah.
kind of developing them into being managers and directors.
Is the CEO or president of Philip Morris, is that KC?
Yeah,
Is he?
Crossway.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've played golf with him before. But how are you related to Altria?
So we're a
Subsidiary of Altria?
And they're the parent, they're the holding company.
Do you know anybody who works over on the Altria side?
Yeah, Austin does, Norden.
Okay.
I know a handful.
We've had quite a few Altria students.
There's been like 20 of them.
I've heard we're cold.
Well, I love having them because they have endless stories of dysfunctional things that happen.
Right.
I mean, countless stories of.
That's the Altria side, because in 2017, Philip Morris's net revenue was $72 billion. Altria's was 17. So we gave them $50 billion to throw away, in my opinion.
Right.
Or come up with new ideas, you know.
Right.
So we're really lean. Philip Morris is pretty lean and kind of like, I think we're really doing a good job just making all the money and allowing them to be, I don't know, try and come up with e-cigarettes and all these other products.
Yep.
So it's interesting.
But in terms of their, you know, leadership programs or development programs, it sounds like they jump from new modern thinking to new modern thinking, or
Right.
program to program, or idea du jour to idea du jour.
I
So
kind of take it upon myself. That's why I'm here.
good. I like that. Yeah, the way that I kind of think, let's see if I can stretch this out. The way that I think about this article was, if I were to say what was the key takeaway of this article, it was soft skills. To be a successful leader, you need to really have mastered those soft skills. Even if you're young and ambitious and smart and highly educated and motivated and determined and all those things, it doesn't matter. If you don't have these, then you're not going to be able to. You're not going to be emotionally prepared for the rigors of leading and managing people. What are some soft skills that you guys think are important?
Storytelling.
Yeah, EQ. Yep, storytelling. That's a great one.
What was that one? What's EQ stand for?
Emotional quotient. Like IQ is intelligence quotient.
Okay, I gotcha.
So this is knowing how to relate to people, that type of thing.
Listening skills.
Yes, very good. What else? I heard, Julian, you said something early on. Started with an E.
E.
Empathy.
Oh, okay.
Big time.
I was going to say something else too.
Yeah, what?
Influence without authority, which is a soft skill.
Yeah.
Even just influencing.
True.
Very good. Yeah. What else? Anything else? I wrote down a few myself. I didn't. Oh, I could heard. I heard it. No, I got it. I think another big one is being visible. Leadership, visible leadership.
What do you mean visible? Like candor, or?
Does that go along with transparency?
No, it means literally being visible, not sitting in your office, stuck in a corporate building, being out in the field, talking to people, walking through the operations and the manufacturing line, going down to people's desks, sort of sitting on the side of their desk saying, hey, how's it going? Small pats on the back, small little, hey, how you doing? Being more like an everyday person. If you're a president or CEO and you're up in some corporate tower and you never come out and see anybody, people can't really relate to you.
And then people are afraid of you,
Yeah.
which is what I learned, which took me a little bit by surprise, that
Yeah.
you're so intimidating to people. They're afraid to speak
Yeah.
to you until you start going down and saying, hey, you want to get lunch today? And you break that barrier, and then
Yeah.
and that's how I think for me I'm able to gain their buy-in.
Yeah, because you seem really intimidating. I mean, like I would. No, but you're right. You're right.
Big things I had to work through
Sure.
when I went to the league.
But isn't that funny?
I intimidated people, which is.
But isn't that funny that someone who seems very kind and approachable, but because you're the boss, people are sort of on guard. So it's a big thing.
I had that problem in most leadership roles. I'm also very much of an introvert, so I just want to get the job done. Don't talk to me unless there's a problem. I try to break away from that, but I also have a very dry sense of humor. I'm very.
Oh, good. We'll get along.
I'm very to the point. So even if there was a problem, unless it was a fire or an explosion, people wouldn't tell me about it until it blew up. So. Because I just built that wall around me. So
Yeah.
it was a big pill to swallow to be like, you got to get out, otherwise people are not going to talk to you until there's a catastrophe.
Well, I think the key lesson there is to understand yourself and know what you're doing right and wrong. That's what EQ is. I mean, so if I was teaching just a general leadership class, probably session number 1 would be, this. It would be, if you were to survey all the Fortune 500 CEOs and say, what is the one overriding common trait? It would be that they are really aligned with their personality, meaning they know what they're good at and they know what they're bad at. And the things that they're good at, they focus on and try to push forward. The things that they're bad at, they find people to surround themselves with people who can do it for them. The biggest problem in leadership is when you think you're good at something that you're not. And then you're not aware of, hey, I'm the world's greatest leader, but don't talk to me, or a listener, but don't talk to me. Well, then, if you think you're a great listener, but you're putting up these walls, then you're going to have a problem. So leadership is really about having this high EQ.
And I think just for the people that are here looking at further if I'm just interjecting real quick to you.
Yeah.
Our organizational behavior, there's a huge EQ
Yeah.
section of that
Yeah.
class. And
Yeah.
I felt like the whole class was just on EQ.
Yeah, there were like a few chapters and you read a book about it. So it's like self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management.
Yeah.
And then you have all the tests you can take. And, I mean,
Yeah.
it's very
Exactly.
helpful and insightful.
When did you take that course?
Maybe 2 years ago, maybe
Okay.
a year ago.
We just took it last semester.
Was Eva Hartman teaching that? Yeah. Okay. I know her pretty well. Yeah, I think she's good. She used to be a practitioner too. She was head of HR at Tredegar, who's one of my customers actually. So I've gotten to know her pretty well. And one more, which I think is a good one. I don't want to yank this thing. It's a little bit about being visible. I kind of call it small recognition and rewards. When you're the leader, just sometimes giving a little pat in the back to somebody goes a million miles. It really, it goes so much further than giving someone a bonus or giving someone a pay raise. Of course they want that too. But that's not really why most people do what they do. People just want to believe that their work has meaning and has value to the company. And if you're the boss and you just stop by someone's desk and say, hey, I read that report you sent out, great job, thanks so much. That's all you need to do. And you know, that stuff is free. I mean, it's literally free and it literally takes no time. And it's a real shame that more leaders don't do that type of stuff because it just goes so far. So, you know, to me, this article was suggesting that, you know, really young people, and it doesn't have to be just because you're young, but people who are unprepared for enterprise leadership lack this set of competencies, this soft skill set. But they specifically mention a few specific things. And again, this article was written a little bit more to the point of view of being someone who's considering promoting a person. So to me, it was a bit of a recommendation to the reader, as if you are contemplating elevating someone. But one of the recommendations was deepen 360-degree feedback. Has anybody ever taken one of these? Have you?
Well, I had a lot of questions for you on this.
Yes.
Because I found, we tried doing 360-degree feedback, and boy, did that not go well in
Okay,
the
well,
organization because
what went wrong?
everything. I think the employees, we had absolutely no organizational structure or HR when I first came to Rate. And
Okay.
so then we dove into these like 360 reviews. Well, talk about getting everybody mad at everybody and offending everybody. And
Was it anonymous?
you know, in a smaller organization,
It's hard to be
nothing,
anonymous.
nothing that's anonymous. And
Yeah.
that, I think, is another problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was reading this thinking, I don't believe a word they're saying, like when I'm, you know, because it just seemed like it didn't work well. Everybody was really offended, and I felt like I was putting out more fires than I knew what to do with. And can you believe this one said that? And it was bad enough that the management had changed so much, and not just top management, like mid-level management had changed so much that you already had all these people who, I know how to do my job, and you're going to come and tell me to do it different, and that's not, you know, how they want to go along. And now they're having the opportunity to tell that manager that, and it just...
I understand, and I've been through a couple 360 processes, and I can definitely see that if it's not organized correctly and not facilitated correctly, it could degenerate into that chaos. Yeah, hurt feelings, not constructive at all. So certainly you need to be careful. Does everybody know what a 360 is, by the way? I mean, don't be embarrassed if you don't, but...
I imagine it's like a census session, kind of, I'm guessing.
So basically what happens is if you're the... And normally the whole team is doing it at the same time. It's normally not just one person, but sometimes it could be, especially if you're new to an existing team, you might do it that way. But what happens is you send out a survey, and there's a lot of different prepared ones online, but you send out a survey to your, number one, you fill it out yourself, and that's kind of your baseline. how well do you think you do on these different criteria or metrics? You know, how good of a listener are you? How empathetic are you? You know, that type of stuff. And then you send it to your boss or a couple of superiors, and then you try to send it to a couple of your equals, and then you send it to some direct reports if you have direct reports. And even I've seen some where you send it externally, external stakeholders that you might, and they all take the exact same survey. So then what they try to do is they try to look at how you score yourself versus how these other clusters of people score you. So normally they don't combine them all. They sort of look at, your superiors, how do they score you? Your coworkers, how do they score you? And your direct reports, how do they score you? Because everyone has a slightly different, interaction with you. And then you sort of look at how aligned you are with your perception of yourself versus these other people's perception of yourself. And then there's usually a lot of space for comments. And so then that's when people can just, Matt's a jerk, he blew me off, that's when it could really go crosswire. But
And I think it's a smaller organization, and we were trying to raise some awareness. But there weren't, in most of the positions, there weren't really two people doing the same position. So I think, like, in the role of when I worked like at the hospital, we had a team of accountants, right? It would be different versus a small organization where you may be my peer, but you really don't know what I do. So I think that's where a lot of the
it could be, yeah.
trouble stems.
But I agree with what they said. They said you need to deepen it. I mean, I think if you just send out if you just sort of decide, hey, you know what, we're going to do a 360, and I'm going to go online, I'm going to find a website that will do it and administrate it, and I'm just going to send it out and say, everyone do it. You may not get great.
We used an HR company to help, but it still was.
So
I chalk it up as something we definitely shouldn't have done.
So the best ones that I've done, you send out the forms, people complete it online. There's an HR person facilitating it. She or he gets the feedback, reads it, reviews it, then sets up a session with the person who's taking the 360 and shares the feedback. But then there's a session where you then are with as many of those people as possible, and they're helping to make it constructive. Right. And they encourage people being very honest, and normally things come out that are, at least when I've been through it, have been pretty useful. I remember one in particular that there was a guy in our office who was kind of an IT guy, and he wears glasses like me, and he has a habit of when people come to see him, he kind of does that, because I guess he has like bifocals or something. And somebody said that they thought that was very condescending, that he would look at people like that. And of course he had no idea that he was doing this, and had no idea that people would interpret that to be something malicious, but that was a feedback. And so he said, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'll keep my glasses on this time. So I mean, but it's just amazing how small little quirky things like that could be perceived as some sort of microaggression. So I found that the 360s can really open the door. But the interesting one is and we'll talk about this later, that if you're new to the team, if you've just been promoted and people don't know you, or they just kind of know of you. Hey, you've been in the organization, I never really worked directly with you or for you. To do one of these early on is actually kind of interesting, because then it allows you to have very open conversations to say, well, here's my work style. I'm very approachable, I welcome all ideas, but you know what, I'm a little bit introverted, and if I don't come over and talk to you a lot, don't interpret that to mean that I'm aloof or arrogant, but fair warning, I'm a little bit introverted. If you tell that to people up front, then they won't go through those rounds of, wow, why didn't he talk to me, or what? So I think this is a good suggestion.
I have a question. In your organization, when you did that, you guys did the face-to-face with every single person? Or Wow, okay.
Well, it was only, I can't remember these, it was like 7 of us.
Oh, okay. So just a leadership group.
It was me and my direct reports, yeah. This was an interesting one. Interrupt the ascent. So this is for somebody who's been promoted and maybe gone sideways, maybe gone up, but is clearly on this fast track. they encourage companies or people who are considering lifting them again to hit the brakes and interrupt this climb and this path and test them out on whether or not they can really become this, if you go to the 7 shifts, I guess this would be sort of like being that integrator, from analyst to integrator. They suggest you give somebody a project or a job or a role that's cross-functional, and how do they lift the performance of this collective, loosely connected team. And I thought that was kind of an interesting one. That's not, before I read this article, that's not something that would have necessarily come to my mind, but I found it to be an interesting suggestion.
I've seen this actually happen in a lot of corporations, and what I didn't put together until I read this article is I never thought of it as a deliberate step in like kind of the promotion ladder. I just kind of read it as a happen chance. You know? And then I was wondering how much, I think I paid attention to my direct team and the promotion ladders and what have you, but you know, how much in corporate America does someone really pay, like let's say at Philip Morris, does someone really pay attention to like the people under them and whether they're growing too fast, and then do they have the opportunity to create that project for them? And maybe the answer is yes, and I just haven't been exposed to it. But
Well, if I could put myself in the roles of some VP at Philip Morris, I think the situation would be there's a middle manager who has been successful. You know, Alex has been a very successful quality manager and a very successful engineer, and he has his latest performance evaluation, and he says, you know, I'm stale and I'm bored, and I really want another job, and you know, I have ambitions, and if Philip Morris can't find something for me, openly speaking, I'm going to start looking. You know, someone delivers that type of message to their line manager. So then the question is, well, do we go ahead and promote this person into some sort of a leadership function, or do we think they're not emotionally prepared yet? Alex is a great guy. He's a hard charger. He lacks some of this stuff, so we just don't know that he's ready yet. So instead, you know what? There's a project where we're trying to get the paper factory to shrink their costs, but they got to talk to marketing and engineering in order to find this thing. So you know what? Let's stick him in this project role for 12 months and see how he does. That's, I think, more kind of the scenario.
Right. Yeah.
And I do think that happens. I think if you come across a candidate who you just don't think is quite ready yet, you know, you would hesitate to put them in charge of something that
I guess
is a setup for failure.
I just didn't realize it was kind of an intentional thing to happen.
I actually have been told by my boss that that's probably what's going to happen to me.
Okay, there you go. You lack soft skills.
In like 2 years, because I'm too young to really have direct reports, in my opinion. And
In your opinion or their opinion?
I guess both of our opinions.
Okay, well.
But she was like, yeah, there's this thing where it's called like T grading, where you keep your pay grade and you just kind of go somewhere else and shadow people and work on projects, and you're replaced. And then we just pick you up whenever there's an old
So
thing.
they have it named.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now I'll warn you. You got to be careful when you accept this, because if they put you in a job that's not really well defined, you can get caught in the white space.
Right.
You know,
they're like, what's your point for being around?
You don't really report to anybody, and that to me, like, one of the worst things is when you report to multiple people.
Yeah, being dotted line.
Then nobody really takes ownership of you, and nobody really takes it upon themselves to progress you, and especially if you work in a job that doesn't have a real direct line or direct function. Especially if there's any sort of downsizing, you know, people that are caught in the middle are like the first ones that go, because nobody's really fighting to keep them.
You'd probably be like, well, wait a second. Like, this is what you guys, yeah. So that is risky.
So just be careful. But it could be a great experience, and you know, maybe get written on paper, you know, in 18 months you're guaranteed some job back.
Yeah, I'd just be take a lot of caution in like threatening to leave the company? Because I've heard that's just like such a no-no.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't recommend doing that.
Yeah,
But I mean, I think you can let people know that you're ready for your next assignment, and they'll interpret that if they don't find something for you fairly quickly, you're going to get bored and start looking around. But I wouldn't recommend anybody say, I'm going to leave if you don't. I mean, that's, someone said that to me, that'd be a quick road ticket out.
Optimistically, I can't wait to take on more. I love it here. I mean, that's right. I mean,
Can't wait for my T grade.
yeah, you just come in and I want to take on more.
Yes.
With that method also, you're not just saying like I want to progress, but you're also saying like when you say I want to take on more, like I want to do more for this firm. Like I don't want to. I'm not just thinking about me. Whereas if you just say like give me this or I'm out of here, like
Yeah.
I'm a jerk, so I'd be like, all right, well God bless, hope good luck in your next venture. Like,
Right. I think most people would feel that way. No. I think there's an art
Totally.
to communicating that sort of stuff. More soft skills. Act on your commitment. Don't give the inexperienced manager the impression that emotional competencies are optional. You know, this is not optional. Hold them accountable for their interpersonal skills. In some cases, deny them a promotion, but promise them that if they are able to change, that will be rewarded. This one is, to me, this is a little bit more of a.
Sorry.
Oh.
I think the lights.
I think that was a power situation.
Yeah, I got a text from the university that there's 5 wings and stuff.
Oh, really?
Are we on backup now?
Let's try that again. Maybe it's warming up. Sometimes when it clicks off, it takes a minute to warm up. Well, we'll figure it out.
Oh, I see the light blinking.
Okay.
Be coming back.
But I hear it.
There it is.
To me, this one was a little, This sounds like it was written by a professor. You know, this is something that sounded good on paper. You know, if you don't change your behavior, you know, I'm not going to give you the promotion. I mean, I don't know that. You know, in today's world, it's hard. It's actually hard to be this frank with people. If you're lacking soft skills, if you're lacking emotional intelligence, I guess it depends on what it is. If you're just not empathetic or you have bad listening skills, you know, I think that's something that you can communicate. If somebody, there we go. If somebody is, a jerk or mistreating people or creating a hostile environment, I mean, you know, don't even invest in those people. You know, just get them out. You know, I think for the sake of this article, they were trying to just talk about, you know, a bit of an extreme case. You know, people who are, you know, hard chargers. You know, MBA hard chargers. Most people aren't like that. But I think the point is, if somebody is climbing the ranks, but they really lack this, don't ignore it. You know, you got to address it with them and tell them that is a critical skill that they're going to be expected to have. And frankly, it's for their own benefit. If you promote somebody who doesn't have this, they're very quickly going to fail. They're not going to have credibility. They'll be bad storytellers. They won't connect with people emotionally. And before long, you know, they won't be thriving. So you'll do them a favor if you have to address it with them. This one, institutionalized personal development. You know, I really believe in this one. This is something that we'll sort of talk about later in the class, but I really believe, you know, maybe to like Selena's point, you need a plan. You need a plan. You can't just sort of, you know, sort of say, I'll cross all those bridges when I get there. Then you become more like a firefighter. You need to have a plan. You need to have a strategy. I think the more organized you are about your personal development, the better you are able to stay on track. So if you're lacking skills, if you need training, you need classes, you want to get an MBA, you need to find a mentor, you know, you need to get cross-functional training. If you need all those things, do yourself a favor and kind of get it down on paper, talk to your HR person or talk to your line manager, and really have a development plan. Really institutionalize it, and that way you can hold your company accountable if they're not accelerating that. If it's been 12 months and they promised you they were going to put you in the new leader program and they haven't done it yet, you can go back to your manager and say, hey, we talked about this. That this is my next development step. When is it going to happen? But to me, it's one of those ones where if you don't ask, you won't necessarily get it. So you got to ask for it. So I really believe in being very structured and process oriented when it comes to your development. And then I think this one is huge. I think the Army is probably a great example of just because you have a rank on your sleeve or on your shirt, you don't have any credibility. But the leader that can that along the way has been in the mud and has developed these relationships and these ties, that's the person who is going to have the followers and have the credibility. So this creating or this cultivating of informal networks. I mean, in any, whether it's a swimming pool organization or your church or your company, or okay. Is it high winds outside? Is it really?
60 miles an hour.
Really? Wow.
I've never had that happen here.
Wow.
Have you, Julie?
Huh? No.
3.5, 4.
I saw the little notification. I was like, okay. High winds, I guess.
That's weird. Oh yeah, I see a little high wind alert.
Actually,
Yeah, let's all go stand next to the window.
Is there a warning or anything? Like a tornado warning?
Yeah, I don't know.
No, we haven't gotten a text message for that.
Did your computer turn off too?
No, luckily it's still on. Yeah.
All of our phones will start going off.
Where would the shelter be in this building? Just
The hallway.
just somewhere away from a window.
Yep. It's actually on the back side of that classroom across there. There's
Okay.
a little tornado picture.
yeah,
Good to know. Good to know.
My father-in-law's the safety director here.
There you go. That's good to know. I mean, whenever we have a meeting at our plant, the first thing we talk about is safety and talk about, if in case of emergency where the rally point is, but never dawned on me in this building to think about it. But so sorry about that. But
we're on the last point.
yeah. So informal networks. So I mean, I think everybody knows the old saying that it's not what you know, it's who you know. I mean, the same thing holds true in business. Really, it's just those. If you need information, you need to know who to ask, and they have to like you, really, to give it to you, to get the full picture. And if you're the boss, if you're intimidating, if you don't walk around and they fear you, it's going to be awfully hard to get the information that you need. So a good piece of advice for everybody who's coming up in an organization is just be friendly with everybody and just cultivate those social networks, because down the road you might use them. I mean, for me, there are people. I mean, I work for a big company. We got 30,000 people in our company. I've of course only really met a fraction of them, but every so often someone will say something to me, and I'll say, oh, you know what? I know a guy I'll call. I haven't talked to the guy in probably 8 years, but it's someone who I worked with way in the past and have a good relationship with. And when I call him up, I get what I need. So it's just amazing how those things pay dividends. So that is a good piece of advice for everybody.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you're going to talk about this later in the class, but like that last one, I do sales occasionally, like with other clients and stuff like that, and that's one thing you have to do a lot. Like they have no obligation to pay attention to you, but at the same time you have to build those relationships. But at the same time, like every second that they spend talking to you is interrupting their day. So, like I have there's some people that you do that with. You can ask them and they'll tell you their life story. You get to know each other, have friends, become friends. But then there are some people who are like, what do you want? Like I have 3 seconds, and then every time I go see them, it's like, what do you want? Like I just want to get to know. I don't have time for that. So like, how do you balance that, especially with people that you want to build networks with, and not trying to let them see like you want something from them, but you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I do. I mean, I'm in sales, so I know. Well, I mean, let's be honest. Some people are more naturally going to think like a partner.
Yeah.
The reality is whenever you're trying to sell something or they're trying to buy something, it's almost like a consulting project. They're a needs holder and you're a possible solutions provider. And if they think that way, then they'll think of you as a partner, as a strategic partner. You can help me. You can help me achieve whatever I need. I need to procure a bunch of equipment at a certain price. Maybe you can help me. Or I'm looking for a breakthrough that could lift our performance. So, some people just are programmed that way. Other people, to them, it's just, cold calling, a hard sell. I don't want to listen to this. So, it's harder to break through to people who don't have that perspective. But if you really need to, if you just can't get around it, like this is just a person you have to deal with and you have to call on them, the best thing to do is maybe try to find their circle of people around them and start making some contacts with them to see if they can't influence this person a little bit or give you some insights as to say, hey, Tim's a real jerk. What's he into? Oh, he's into dogs. Oh, okay. Next time I see him, I'll just sort of say, oh, hey, I hear you got some dogs. Tell me about just whatever. You're just trying to find that red thread to connect.
Yeah.
So maybe talk to people in their circle. That's power and influence, how to persuade people. So.
Kind of to go off of that.
Yeah.
This guy I met that works at Capital One is a coder for them.
Okay.
And if you message him or say hey on your guys' messaging board, he won't say hey back. He'll send this link to an article saying there's no point in you saying hi to me and then me saying hi back and being nice to each other. Let's just get to the point. What do you need? But those people who there's never a chance, you just assume that's it.
I'll send an article back about the benefits of saying hi and building relationships.
There we go.
Well,
you really have to gauge who you're talking to. I was in sales for 2 years, and I didn't do well, obviously. But I'm not a people person. I gotta be honest. I'm not empathetic. That's my problem. But if you're talking to someone and they're quick, they want the numbers, they want the figures, then I'm gonna approach them and engage them. Here's the figures. If they want to talk about Philadelphia, then I'm all right, let's talk about the Super Bowl. You just gotta balance it and shift. You have to shift your level as needed. Unfortunately, with cold calling and door to door, anything like that, the fact that you called me up and broke me out of my routine, you're already going uphill. I'm already kind of upset with you as soon as you call me.
Yeah.
I would, two things. One, communications class has a whole MP project in it.
Yeah,
And I'm
good to go.
going for the university, okay? I'm gonna get a job here.
Yeah, this is good.
And two, I would say, when I see people who respond in these ways, I look at them and say, okay, this is kind of their deficiency, and so I don't judge them on it, even though they're kind of standoffish, right? And I just try and again, not really work around, but I think sometimes recognizing that, okay, well, they're not in the MBA program, so they don't know they have this problem because they haven't taken all these big classes. So what am I going to do to help them?
Yeah, this guy at Capital One sounds like a very unique animal. So
I thought it was hilarious, but,
Yeah.
But at the same point, I was like, yeah, you probably won't jump to the other side of the analyst or whatever.
No, I think he'll be anchored over there. I had a lady who worked with me who was in our finance department, and she was like the lady that would check over your expense reports before you got processed. And as the president of the company, you kind of expect a little bit of goodwill, the way our company works is that we had corporate credit cards for a long time, and then there was some issues elsewhere in the company with people abusing it. So they just decided to say, look, everyone from now on just uses your personal card, but we'll reimburse you quickly so that you're not, carrying a big balance on behalf of the company. That was the goal originally, but then we went from reimbursing twice a week to just once a week. And then, of course, if you somehow missed the 3 p.m. Wednesday deadline, you wouldn't get reimbursed until the next week. So quite often, you were carrying something for 8 to 10 to 12 days, and then if you threw in someone on vacation, it might be 3 weeks. And as the president, if we do a conference or something, I mean, I'll swipe $20,000 on my card, for a bunch of hotel rooms and conference spaces and limos and transportations, and I mean, so sometimes I'm carrying these massive balances, and it just would be nice for them to sort of say, hey, you may not have every single piece of paper here, but go ahead and submit it, and we'll reimburse you, and then submit the paper afterwards. And if we see a discrepancy, we can sort of, account for that later. But we had this one lady who was just like, this guy. She if there was one decimal point wrong, she was just, a roadblock. And so she used to send me these really terse emails saying, you're missing a receipt for your lunch on Thursday. And it was probably like a $7. So she would hold up a $10,000 expense report for a $7 lunch. But she was amazing at writing very short emails, like 9 words, boom. And then that would cause me a half hour's worth of work, because now I had to go find the receipt. And of course, the worst thing is when you don't have the receipt, like, just when you're traveling, I mean, you just have paper everywhere. So then I have to go online, go to my credit card, print off the thing, blah, 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 blah. So then I decided to retaliate. So then whenever she did that, I would write her the longest possible email explaining who I was with, where we were, what we ate, what the whole thing. I mean, I would intentionally just make it for no other reason than I knew that I was going to then waste her time, because she was going to have to read it. And so then I would sort of have a bunch of stuff. The key part was at the very end. So I knew she had to read the entire thing to get down there. And this became a little bit of a war. Ultimately, she won, because now she's just wasting more of my time. But just that was my sort of passive-aggressive way to retaliate, was just to make her read this, long-winded email. So, if you have a sense of humor, you can approach it that way, maybe. But
how's your relationship with her?
Well, we fired her eventually. Not me. She didn't work for me. She was in our finance department, but she got fired. Good. I was glad. Yeah.
But what about these?
No.
So there's a lot of people who don't want to necessarily be leaders, or are content having these very
Sure.
strategic, in a different way, jobs. Like your coder, as an example. Like, it probably doesn't mind coding for the next foreseeable future.
Correct.
And so I don't know that we need to have these expectations that they want to chit-chat with you.
Right.
Like, I know a lot of the coders, and it is not uncommon for them to do that and be very snarky.
Right.
Because, like, they get paid to do one thing, and it's just to write code. Like, they're not there to answer your questions or tell you who to talk to. Like, they're paid to, like, design stuff and get it out there. And so, like, how do you find that balance of, like, respecting what they're being paid to do, while also trying to balance the greater good of the company, what you're trying to do? Like, obviously, your $7 lunch was not worth anyone's time. But
No. Well, you need, every company needs specialists. By definition, if everyone, I'm using a whole bunch of, puns and metaphors, but I mean, there's too many chefs in the kitchen, or, I mean, you can have, if everyone's a generalist, if everyone's a leader, then you don't have doers. I mean, if everyone was a general, who's going to... Something like that, yeah. So, I mean... that's fine. I mean, everybody needs, and in the HR world, they would probably refer to those people, the people who are, content doing their exact job for the next 10, 15 years. There's a term for that. I think they call it like a stabilizer or something. Yeah, I mean, you need those people. That's fine. But number one, then recognize that and understand that, and don't expect them to be moving to this other side, and don't promote them into positions where they're going to fail. And then, I mean, you can still be a specialist. You can still be, content and not be a jerk. I mean, maybe this guy is.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's very friendly, but
outside of there, but when he said that, he's like,
yeah.
I'm kind of just like, I'm pretty blunt at work. I was kind of shocked.
So, I mean, there's, to me, and look, we have an IT guy, and he sounds a lot like this guy. He maybe one day I'll print out a series of emails. So we have two guys that are kind of like that. One's a PhD in metallurgy, and then our IT guy. And whenever there's a computer issue, they have a word war with each other, and they always put me on copy. And it's actually humorous to read this because these are these two super stubborn, introverted guys that are just bashing heads. And at some point, I'm exhausted by it. And but maybe one day I'll actually cross out the names so you can't see their names. But I'll let you guys read it because it'll be funny. I think to Selena's